From instant teleportation in Star Trek to swords made of light in Star Wars, we've been captivated by impossible technology for decades. But how much of it is actually possible? In this video, we're going to explore the real science behind science fiction, from transporters to O'Neill cylinders, and even something resembling a hypersphere drive. So let's start with one of the most iconic ideas in all of science fiction: transporters. I'm science fiction author Simon Evans. Be sure to subscribe and check out my latest sci-fi epic, The Flaxen Tyranny. Transporter tech is both incredible and a complete philosophical nightmare. We've all seen it a million times before. The crew of the Enterprise step onto a transporter, disappear, and then materialize thousands of miles away on the planet below. It looks very cool, but what, if any, science is actually behind it? The answer is some. The basic idea sounds simple enough. You convert matter into energy, transmit that energy somewhere else, and then reconstruct the original pattern at the destination. On paper, that sounds almost reasonable. In reality, it's anything but, because the amount of energy involved is beyond extreme, and the amount of information required is even worse. If you converted a human body entirely into energy, the result would be roughly 1,500 megatons of TNT. That's about 30 times the most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated, and that's just to move one person. So the Enterprise would have to be able to store that kind of energy, even if only for a second or two. As far as I'm aware, there's no clear explanation in canon for how it would do that. But I love reading your comments, so if I've missed something, let me know. Okay, now we need to deal with the information involved, because this is where things get even more insane. There are roughly 7 octillion atoms in the human body. That's a 7 followed by 27 zeros. But that number doesn't even come close to explaining the amount of data you'd need to store a human pattern, because atoms aren't fundamental. They're made of protons and neutrons, which are themselves made of quarks. And then there are electrons, constantly moving in complex quantum states around them. And if you thought we were done, we're not even close, because it's not enough to just know where everything is. You would also need to know the exact properties of those particles, their charge, their spin, their energy states, possibly even their full quantum configuration. So how much data is that? Well, even with extremely optimistic assumptions, you're looking at something on the order of 10 to the power of 28 bits. That's more data than all of humanity currently stores, by an absurd margin. And you wouldn't just need to store it, you'd need to read it, perfectly, instantly, and reconstruct it without error. To be fair, Star Trek does a much better job of addressing this problem than it does the energy one. They introduce something called a pattern buffer. It shows up in multiple episodes, most notably in Relics, where Scotty manages to preserve his pattern in the buffer for nearly 70 years, which, I'll admit, is one of my favourite moments in the entire series. So we'll give Star Trek a pass on this one, because, let's be honest, transporters are some of the coolest pieces of technology ever imagined. So how close are we to transporter technology? The answer is not very, but there have been some genuinely fascinating developments, not in transporting matter itself, but in transporting the state of matter. This is known as quantum teleportation, and despite the name, it's not about moving objects from one place to another. Instead, it's about transferring the information that defines a particle from one particle to another at a distance. In simple terms, you're not moving the thing, you're recreating its exact state somewhere else. This relies on a phenomenon called quantum entanglement, where two particles become linked in such a way that the state of one is directly related to the state of the other. By measuring one particle and transmitting that information, you can effectively imprint its state onto another. It's not teleportation in the science fiction sense, but it is a small step in that direction. Next, we're going to explore a piece of science fiction technology you may not have heard of. It's called the sphere drive, and unlike warp drives, or hyperspace travel, this one may actually have more grounding in real physics. Because it doesn't try to break the laws of relativity, it obeys them. The sphere drive isn't faster than light, it simply gets very close. In my science fiction novel, The Flaxen Tyranny, I had to come up with some believable technology for the starship Echo. At the start of the story, humanity is about to embark on its first interstellar mission, to colonize a world roughly 30 light-years away. But I couldn't use something like a warp drive, because it ignores something that was fundamental to my plot: time dilation. So instead, I came up with the sphere drive, and the way it works is pretty interesting. It relies on something called a hypersphere. If you're not familiar with the idea, a hypersphere is simply a sphere extended into 4 dimensions. In the same way that a circle becomes a sphere in 3 dimensions, a sphere can be extended into a 4th spatial dimension. We see similar ideas in science fiction with hypercubes, or tesseracts, which are 4-dimensional versions of cubes. That concept is explored really well in Interstellar. It works by extracting energy from higher spatial dimensions, dimensions that are invisible to us. Now, that might sound far-fetched, but it's actually grounded in real theoretical physics, even if it remains unproven. One of the biggest challenges in modern physics is the incompatibility between general relativity and quantum mechanics. These 2 theories are incredibly successful on their own, but when scientists try to combine them, they simply don't work together. The mathematics breaks down completely. And one of the leading attempts to resolve this problem is string theory. But for string theory to work, you need extra dimensions. Not just 1 or 2, typically 10 or even 11, depending on the model. Some versions of these theories suggest that gravity itself may be spread out across these higher dimensions, which could explain why it appears so weak compared to the other fundamental forces. I'm going to do a deeper dive into the propulsion technology in the Flaxen Tyranny soon, so if that's your kind of thing, consider subscribing. Finally, we're going to look at a piece of technology that is far more grounded in reality, and very close to my heart: the O'Neill cylinder. An O'Neill cylinder is a type of space habitat designed to support human life indefinitely. Instead of living on a planet, you live inside a rotating cylinder in space. As it spins, it creates artificial gravity along the inner surface using centrifugal force. So from the inside, it feels like you're standing on the ground. But instead of looking up at the sky, you're looking across at the other side of the cylinder. Entire landscapes can be built inside: forests, rivers, cities, all contained within a single rotating structure. Massive windows run along its length, allowing sunlight to enter, often redirected by mirrors. In theory, these habitats could house millions of people, and unlike planets, they can be built anywhere. In the Flaxen Tyranny, the crew of the starship Echo return home after their mission to colonize a new world ends in disaster. But because of time dilation, thousands of years have passed on Earth, while only months passed for them in stasis. When they finally arrive back in the solar system and reach Jupiter, they find something unexpected: an O'Neill cylinder, 40 miles across and 150 miles long. From the outside, it's cold, metallic, mysterious. But when they enter, they find a paradise: forests, rivers, open skies, a world built by human hands. And it's all maintained by its steward, a strange AI girl the crew come to know as Silly. She was one of my favorite characters to write. No spoilers, but she's thousands of years old and deeply distrustful of humans, for reasons that become heartbreakingly clear. And in a way, she's just as much a product of that world as the cylinder itself. Okay, we'll leave it there for today. Next time, I'll be exploring even more science fiction technology from other universes and from my own. But if you enjoyed this glimpse into the world of the Flaxen Tyranny, I genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm about to play a short trailer for the book now, so feel free to stick around for that. And if not, maybe I'll see you next time. The Flaxen Tyranny is available in print, Kindle, and audiobook, narrated by the fantastic Jane Wing.